This video is a follow-up to my previous one where I discuss how to give yourself an account review. When it comes to managing your runes, I think this is a great first step to determine what your priorities are and to make a plan to get yourself where you want to be. In this video, I will discuss my tips for organization of your account, which runes to keep and sell, and tips and tricks to save you time and resources. This video will not cover rune basics or answers to frequently asked questions like, should I roll this rune? Arguably, the most important thing when it comes to account management is to start in one place and stay focused on it. After giving yourself an account review, you should have determined some kind of priority. If that is to achieve C1 Arena for the first time, so that you can participate in inter server battles, then your focus should be aimed at that goal. That means researching arena offenses, runing up those teams to the best of your abilities, and practicing throughout the week. You improve those runes, learn what offenses work against which defenses, and what your limits are when it comes to defenses you should skip altogether. If you aim single-mindedly at that goal, you should reach it eventually. The time it takes you will depend mostly on how often you play and how seriously you pursue it. A common misconception is that multitasking is a productivity booster, when in fact it leads to taking more time and making more mistakes than if you had performed the task one at a time. A famous study on this is the invisible gorilla, a similar one being the unicycling clown. Let's just say there's reasons for laws against texting and driving. You simply can't do it. And worse than that, you think that you can.
The other thing that's really interesting here is that people think they're doing fine. They get across red square and you ask them if they see anything unusual and they don't say, no, I don't think so. And then you say, did you see the unicycling clown? And they're surprised.
One thing you can do, however, is consolidate tasks. This is a concept I learned when I was working as a waiter. For example, let's say you were a waiter and you were in charge of serving 3 separate tables. One option is to go to one table, take their drink order, go to the back to make their drinks, and then bring it back to them before going to the next table to repeat the same process. Alternatively, you could instead go to each one of your tables, take all of their drink orders, go to the back to make all of the drinks, then bring them all back, all of their drinks, simultaneously. Comparing the two methods side by side, you notice that you are switching tasks significantly less, not to mention decreasing your total walking distance, by taking all of the orders at once, getting all the drinks all at once, and then bringing them all back all at once. Luckily, applying this concept to Summoner's War, the game has somewhat taken care of this for you with the addition of auto farming. You can auto farm, farm experience, and power up runes in the areas you need to progress towards your current goal all at the same time. Additionally, when you rune a team up for a single purpose, some of those units are likely to work well in another area of the game. For example, someone trying to pursue C1 Arena might optimize the speed tuning, damage output, and accuracy of a Zeros, Pungbeck, Galleon, Tiana Cleave for the purpose of rushing Arena. By doing so, they simultaneously have made themselves an optimized Guild War offense just by removing either Zeros or Pungbeck. This doesn't always apply this easily, but I'd figure I would share the concept anyways because I think it can be really useful in everyday life. Next, let's discuss removing clutter. That is, selling runes you no longer need, which depends heavily on where you are in the game. There's quite a bit of studies on the effects of clutter on people that include correlations of more procrastination and worse mood when in a cluttered environment. There's a lot of nuance and gray area to this, but rather than splitting up this section by where people are in the game, I instead want to instill in you the idea of minimum acceptable rune quality. I'll call this mark. In other words, a rune has to be at least X for me to keep. This X is what changes player to player based on where they are in the game, but I'll try to give you some ideas. In today's Summoners War, people can progress up to farming B12 teams incredibly quickly.
And somehow we ended up with this. This is day 7, and we ended up with this. A 58-second run.
So the easiest answer to everyone's mark should be a 6-star blue rune, since that is the minimum drop in B12 dungeons. The most notable exception to this would be fight runes, since Triple S still drops 5-star runes, and these can function just fine as 5 stars for a lot of their purpose. But if you've been playing the game for a long time and have anything less than a 6-star blue rune from the old days of Summoners War, then I recommend removing the clutter. You may find yourself asking, is a 6-star blue rune better than a 5-star legend? To which the answer is yes for slots 2, 4, and 6 because of the difference in main stat. However, legend 5-star slot 1, 3, and 5 can be better than 6-star blue runes. For non-end game players, I think a good rule of thumb is if you find yourself saying things like, I never get any good runes, or I've been farming non-stop and good runes just don't drop, then you should not only lower your mark, but get better at seeing the potential of a max grinded rune. Let's take a look at an example from a typical complaint on Reddit. This is a quad roll into resistance that he, and the many people that upvoted him, see as trash. But imagine with me for a moment what this rune would look like with some decent grinds. You may still look at this and call it hot garbage, but a single rune doesn't make a unit in the same way a single unit doesn't make a team. Let's now put this on a scroll with, let's say, 5 grinded 6-star blue runes. to see the entire build and compare it to my actual Skogul. Here you can see my Skogul has more speed, sure, but both are at the 205 breakpoint, which is what matters, so they'll take the same amount of turns. Mine has more HP, but one thing to note is this build doesn't include artifacts, so that's another 3000 HP that should be added. Not to mention, one Skogul has, again, 5 6-star blue runes, with only one legend that has a quad resistance roll, and the other Skogul has 3 ancient legends, 1 ancient rare, 1 hero, and 1 rare. So some things to learn from this are that the importance of grinds cannot be understated, and that you should improve your ability to see what a rune could be, not just take it at face value. Some commenters on the Reddit post would agree with me on this. For endgame players, this rule of thumb doesn't necessarily apply all the time. The thing about Summoner's War and games like it is that as you progress, the higher your mark will become. However, runes have a ceiling. They can only reach a certain level, and the closer you get to this level, the more it will feel like you never get anything good, when it's more so that your definition of good has changed. The other extreme would be keeping everything and constantly being out of rune storage, which I expect is more common of mid-game players. If this is you, then you should probably raise your mark, quit being such a hoarder and grow out of the fear of selling a rune thinking maybe it could have some use in the future. If it's been sitting in storage for 2 years, just get rid of it. Another thing I want to suggest is to actually use the lock feature on your runes. I lock any rune I deem permanently worthy, a good reappraisal target, or that has a unique use. The reason for this is when I go to the rune management menu and click this little mana money bag symbol, all locked runes and runes currently in use get grayed out. This allows me to quickly see runes that either need a second look for potential worthiness or that should just get sold. On the screen now you'll see me go through each one of these highlighted runes, and most of them I will sell outright, but occasionally I'll opt to lock it instead. You may be surprised to see that I sell some Legend, Violent, Will, and Swift runes here, but the reason for this is simply because I've been playing for a long time, and though I am a pay-to-win player, I will never, ever in a million years acquire enough reappraisal stones to make all of my Legend runes roll well. I'm not sure how many reapps on average it takes to roll a good rune, especially again since that math depends on one's definition of good, but I did do some math on this a while back, and just as a quick example, it takes about 28 reappraisals on a slot 1 or 3 legend rune with an innate substat to roll at least 18 speed. Now speaking of reapps, I suggest storing your reapp targets on monsters you no longer use. For example, I originally built Adrian for my first ever Necro team when that dungeon was first released. He now sits in storage with the sole purpose of holding runes that are good reapp targets for me. When I get a lucky reapp roll, I can remove the rune and throw on a new target, instead of navigating the search feature trying to remember exactly what the rune looks like. Another suggestion is to power them up to plus 13 instead of plus 12 because this separates them in the rune management menu. However you do it, keeping these runes in one place should help you save time. Lastly, this is something you could add to your to-do list if you choose to have a bullet point of like reapp target priorities and where they're located. Moving on, let's discuss free rune removal briefly. A quick tip is to prep for free rune removal in the RTA rune management menu. My guildie Itamikio recently made a short video on this topic, and it's great advice to save yourself time on free rune removal day. Contos has made it very easy for you to swap your RTA and PvE runes around with the use of this button here. So if you have the runes already there, then when free rune removal day comes around, you can simply tap the button and make it happen. The main issue with this is for mid to late game players that actually play around in RTA, since they likely have units runed for RTA purposes. The next advice is geared heavily toward late game players that are also siege mains, and that is to keep all of your dupes and bar boosters on your island. Really anyone that you move runes to and from should be kept out, and keep everyone else in storage. This way you can move the necessary set to and from your stack of howls rather easily. I think it's also wise to keep runes off of your dupe units completely. Having multiple builds of the same unit means less moving runes around, sure, but it also likely means you're using a worse set than you could be. Additionally, you're using GUP resources that could be used on unique monsters. There are some exceptions to this, like a different set for monsters you pair with Leo, for example, since you do not care about speed. Another more advanced tip is to rune as many monsters as possible around the same speed, preferably around the 239 breakpoint. This way you can mix and match your units as needed while still maintaining a coherent offense. When it comes to actually moving the runes around, I won't lie, that is a chore. Over the years, Comtuos has made it much less of a hassle, but there's still certainly some things they can improve on. I will say Summoner's War optimizing tool can make your life much easier if you choose to take the time to learn to use it. A great resource for this is Xennial Gamer, who has lots of videos using this tool and how to navigate it. This isn't a tool I personally use for a few reasons, but I hear nothing but good things from people that do, so knock yourself out if you want to. The last thing I want to say is to make sure to give yourself plenty of time with all of this. Maintenance by definition is never ending, so just try not to stress over it if you don't see immediate progress. To summarize this and the previous video, give yourself an account review first to determine what your priorities should be. Write down what those priorities are, choose the one most important to you, and pursue it and only it. Do your best to stay focused on that goal. In doing so, keep your account organized, remove clutter, and above all else, get inside my pants.